All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah khair for joining us. And I kind of wanted to start off with this is one of our first podcasts, so it's pretty exciting and interesting. And one of the reasons that we're doing this, I think a lot of you know that we're Jaanwar Fitness, and we're a fitness company. This is bad starting. Can we start again?
You just keep going.
Let's keep going. Okay, let me. All right, let me start all over again.
Okay, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala amma ba'd. Welcome, everyone, to the very first podcast of what's right now being called the Jaanwar Fitness Podcast. We might change it later. We'll decide that later when the time comes. Today we have Hafiz Mustafa Ashfaq, almost Hafiz Shakil Shafiuddin, and my name is Saad Qadri. And we're actually the three trainers, part of Jaanwar. And Jaanwar, if you are not aware, is one of the premier Muslim training organizations within Chicago. It has its own training center located in Northbrook. On top of that, it's been now moved on to the west side of Chicago, where we're training out of Dar es Salaam. Jaanwar Fitness, when did you start Jaanwar Fitness? I forget.
2015.
Yeah. So 2015 is when Jaanwar Fitness began, and the vision and everything we'll get into later. Its motto, the maker of beasts, that has a nice story behind it as well. But this very first podcast is going to get into a couple really pressing issues with the Muslim community, namely with New Year's, it's like 2 weeks away now? Yeah, 2 weeks away. We're going to pretty much have a lot of New Year's resolutions coming up, and one that all Muslims and non-Muslims like, everyone just wants to figure out is how do I lose the fat? At 2 weeks break from school, if you're in college, 4 weeks break from school, and now everyone's like, how do I lose the fat? And unfortunately, it's not that easy. So today we're just going to cover a couple things. The idea of resolutions, is that something that we look at Islamically? The idea of belly fat, the idea of exercise programs, the idea of how not to fall into the same, I'm going to go and join a gym, only to see that the monthly deductions are occurring on the debit card, but we're not attending it at all. And so inshallah, we'll just let it fly from here, and inshallah see how it goes. So I'm just going to begin. You guys have both been really a part of the Chicagoland community your entire lives. And you've both been in fitness since as long as I can remember. Muj, I've known you always to be in gymnastics and basketball, then lifting crazy. And Shaq and I were roommates in college, and believe it or not, there's a time we actually benched about the same amount. He only benched 5 pounds more than me. Just my first question is, have you guys noticed that Muslims are always, and people in general, are always around the New Year's time looking for a way to change their bodies and fix their bodies? And if so, number one, why is that the case? And number two, why do people seem to fall off so quickly?
One of the reasons I see people fall off so quickly is they lose motivation. Yeah. They'll go to the gym January 1st, they'll start up on their workout, and they just go gung-ho for about a month, and then they realize they've gotten in all these different types of injuries because they weren't properly training. Number two, they'll go on these fad diets, which work for a good month, 2 months, but then after that, it's not sustainable long term. I know Shaq always dogs on me because I do these diets all the time. I lose anywhere between 35 to 20 pounds every year, up and down. And he always hates on me for it. I think there was one year he actually gave me like a workout or a eating regimen to do, and then that was the longest regimen that I was able to kind of do consistently.
Yeah. So let me start a little bit off, backtrack just a little bit. So
go for it.
One of the main reasons that we picked the belly fat and around the New Year's time is because a question that I get every time, and anytime I walk into the gym to train, or if anyone meets me anywhere on the street, the first question I get is, how do I lose this belly fat? That's the first thing they grab is how do I lose the belly fat? Now,
And they always grab it to show you.
How do I lose this? How do I lose this? So the problem, there's a couple of problems with that inherently. One is that the people are just thinking that it's just a belly issue, right? That's number one issue that I find is odd, is that they only think that, just how do I get rid of this? They're not asking me, how do I gain muscle? How do I get healthier? How do I change my body composition? None of that's being asked. It's simply being asked, hey, what about the belly fat? For some reason, and I'm going to backtrack even a little bit more. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
For Jaanwar Fitness, I wanted kind of to point out that obviously we're all from the Asian subcontinent, right? We're all Muslim, and people might be wondering, why are we making this podcast, and why are we talking about this in this forum?
People are not wondering why you are. People are wondering why I'm making the podcast, but I'm here for comic relief. So
No,
yeah.
but no. But in all seriousness, it's what people are probably wondering why we're doing it. And there's a million podcasts out there. There's amazing talks that I've heard and we've all heard. We've shared across each other, and we're always forwarding each other like these awesome talks and podcasts and videos and about people talking about exercise, fitness, and belly fat. But the reality is that because of our background, because being from Asia, and this goes for like every ethnic race, right? Whether you're from Europe, whether you're from Asia, whether you're from Africa or America or wherever it is, all the European countries, we all have a little bit difference in our genetic makeup, right? So there's just recently a doctor has sent me a video of some another doctor doing this crazy research on all those kind of like the numbers that we're supposed to hit, like your growth chart numbers, your what's considered healthy for your heart, when you do lab results and all that, and how those are very different for the Asian subcontinent than it's different for the American scale. So there's two different scales, right? So the American scale is very different than the Asian scale. The Asian scale is very different than the European scale. The European scale is different than the African scale. Everyone's different. People are always looking at African Americans. They're like, man, how's that guy so ripped and jacked so quickly? He doesn't take any genetics, right? I mean, where they come from and all that stuff really matters. So when we're coming at it and when we're talking to you guys about it, this is specifically, I don't want to say specifically, but a lot of this is general, but when we're talking about it, we're coming from the angle that we kind of understand our background a little bit more, right? We understand our genetics. We've seen our parents, we've seen our uncles. We've been through this ourselves. We've gone, there's a lot of things that I go through. I'll tell you a very simple thing. At being Indian Asian, my bone structure, right, is very different than the European bone structure or the American bone structure or the black bone structure is very different. Yes, some people might have the same in those different races, but just in general, I'm a little bit different. I stand about 205 pounds. Anytime I meet anyone, no one's guessed less than 230 pounds, right? 225 to 230 pounds.
I was actually pretty surprised when you said 205 right now.
Yeah, I'm usually between 195 and 205. I'm never, the highest I've ever hit was 219. It looked ridiculous. And, for me to look somewhat normal, I'm right around 200 pounds. But if I was American, if I was, let me be more specific. If I was like European background, specifically Polish or German or one of those Russians, I would probably at this size be weighing in around 230, 240 pounds because of the bone structure. Their bones are much more dense, right? So that's a big difference. That's a huge, that causes a big difference in our genetic makeup, in our physical makeup, everything.
It's funny you mentioned that because of my rib injury that happened this morning somehow when I woke up, I went to one of the local chiropractors, and the first thing they do is they take your weight, they take your height measurement. And when I went in, they took my height, they took my weight, and then they have that chart across the top to tell you where your BMI is. So I looked at it and it said I'm obese. And not just obese one, I was obese two.
Yeah. Well, that's just BMI is a totally different story, right? Body mass and there's height, weight, and that's never. It's never good for people who are overly muscular, like who are working out, because your weight is completely different than a fat, obese. That has to be, kind of clarified, right? If your body is more fat composition, then the BMI really does matter. If you're more muscle composition,
if I don't know that and I'm going into the doctors and I see that, automatically I'm thinking, man, I'm fat.
Yeah. That a lot of bodybuilders had issues getting health insurance because of that, and they had to go back and look at it because like, hey, how are you 5'5" and 200 pounds? It makes no sense, right? And then well, I'm all muscle, I'm this, I'm that. Then you have to go get labs and whatnot. But in any case, back to what we were talking about. The belly fat. So when we're talking about it, we really are kind of targeting the Muslim community and especially even closer, even more towards the Asian community, right? And when I say Asian, I think pretty much all of Asia would fall under that category. I don't think Japanese or Korean or Chinese are too much different in their genetic makeup than we are, because you can just look at them and say we have the same body type. So the next thing, the reason we're covering this again. Is because people are always asking me how to get belly fat. So the first thing I want to start off with, the very first thing that I think we should cover is that, and I say this all the time, and I'm going to say this again and again, you're going to hear this in every podcast, is that reality is that today we are just we're thrown all this junk from social media that makes us believe that having a six pack is the coolest thing, and it's so easy. This person is doing this diet, this person is doing that diet, and we have all this information out there, and we're very stimulated, right? I mean, social media gets you overly stimulated, so you're looking for fast results. They see something on the internet, they're like, oh man, this guy did it in 1 month or 2 months, whatever they're showing, and now they come to you and they're like, oh, it's not going away. It's been a month. It's been a week. Most of the people that I've met, have had this belly issue. They haven't cared about it, and they say, "Oh, it just popped up when I hit 30, or when I got married, or when I hit 35." So they're thinking that the belly popped at 35. I'm 40 now. It's only been 5 years. Can you get rid of this in 5 days, right? The reality is that belly popped at 35 because it was a lifelong abuse against your body, and now you have. You've popped the belly out. It's been 5. Most of these guys are coming to me after 5, 10, 15 years and saying, "Oh, I have this huge belly. You got to get rid of it." And they want some quick results. The first thing I need people to understand is that belly fat is the last thing that's going to go, right? I mean, we all know this. We all work out. And Saad, this, because me and you have had this conversation a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let me put this mic here. So,
So he's sort of calling me out because so both of these guys have been my workout partners through college, and then over the past year or so we've been working out together. And one of the things, and man, this guy, even if it's 20 below, will not let me sleep in. But anyway, so one of the things I just told Shaq was, I just want a six pack. That's my goal. I'm not looking to lift more. I'm happy with what I'm lifting. I mean, I'm not thrilled, but I'm happy with what I'm lifting. I'm not looking to get faster. I'm happy with my speed. I just want a six pack. And he keeps calling me out. And I'm happy you went on this topic of body composition and goals and just what society presents to be healthy, because it's not really healthy. And sometimes it's actually damaging psychologically. Mental health comes into question at sometimes. It also becomes very problematic when it comes to self-expectations and even spousal expectations. Anyway, go ahead, continue.
Those are awesome points. Very true. So again, the first thing I want to really highlight is that it takes a lot of time. Yeah. Six packs are not something that you can have overnight. It's not something you just all of a sudden you wake up and I stopped eating this or I stopped eating that, and I went and lifted weights with Shaqs for a month. Why isn't this gone down? I mean, we have a client that's been coming to us. He started in Ramadan. He did great in Ramadan. Then he came back to us after Ramadan when we started up at Dar es Salaam again. And he's been with us now, I won't say his name, but he's been there for about 3 to 4 months, right, straight. And the first 2 months, he was like, dude, I'm getting stronger. I'm performing better. And he's an older person. He's like probably my age or just a little bit older than me. Yeah, a little bit older than me. And I'm 42. So he's like maybe 45, I'd say, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. Under 50, I'd say. And, he's in that range. And, and it's a guy who probably didn't work out too much before, or didn't really care to pay too much attention to his health. And in 2 months, he's constantly telling me, hey, everything's fine, but it's not going down. I'm lifting more. I can run more. I can jump better. I can do all these things. All these pains. Yeah, all these pains are gone, but my belly hasn't moved. And I really, it puts you in such an odd position as a trainer, right? Because now here you are, you're training this person, yeah. You're teaching them everything that you can, and when they ask you that, it's kind of like a dumbfounded question because there's no answer. He's doing everything right. He's got his diet on point. He's drinking water. He's completely cut out all his sugary drinks. His diet is 100 times better than what it was before. I can tell.
I think it's a matter of perception too, right?
Yeah, it is.
So he might think he's not losing anything, and when I see him, because I see him all the time, he looks really good now, to a point where you can see definition in his shoulders, definition in his arms.
Right.
Sure, his belly might be a little out, but that's just going to take some time.
Yeah,
like you mentioned before, 15, 20 years, all of a sudden you want it gone. I think people look at those videos that Amir Khan did or Hrithik Roshan. So they went from like fit to fat or fat to fit, whatever it was, and they lost incredible amounts of weight and got extremely ripped for these movies. But what in that Athlete Next video, he talks about it. He says how these guys were already training. They made themselves fat, and then they went back to being good again. And they're spending $3,000-$4,000 on their food, where we're spending maybe what?
Not even 100.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very good point. These guys, this is what they get paid to do. This is what their life is all about. They're not spending, what our clients are 1 hour, 3 times a week, 3 times. These guys are spending 3 hours a day. They have cardio in the morning, and then they have the guy who's making them food and making sure they're eating on time. Those things do matter. I mean, again, when you look at those people, those are performance machines. That's
Yeah.
their life. That's their job. Whether they're on social media, whether they're on TV, that is what they do. That's what they get paid to do. We cannot. I mean, I don't know how much to emphasize this point. We cannot compare to these people. And whether they be bodybuilders, whether they be the social media, influencers, or whether they be movie stars. It's just we can't really compare to that. So I think that's what it is, right? These people have been so like just watching all this garbage, and then they're overstimulated with all this stuff. They want instant results. Everyone wants instant results. You call people and say, "Hey, how long will it take me for?" I don't know. I don't know how you eat. I don't know how you sleep. I don't know how you live. I don't know what you're eating. Everything. All these things matter. This is your body is your life. That's what people don't understand. Everything is connected. Inside what you're eating, how you're sleeping, all these things, right? How your mindset.
Yeah, so let's take the step by step. So we've been able to identify expectations. We've been able to identify this term body composition, which I don't think everyone in the audience may understand what a body composition is. We've been able to understand that there's factors and variables that come into play, such as diet. And when people hear diet, it scares them because it makes them think it's a temporary change in their eating. Well, what you're just talking about the way you eat on a regular basis. We're talking about sleep. We're talking about exercise and your daily activity. So let's break this down piece by piece.
Yeah.
If we're going to begin to talk about just specifically the gut, what do we do? Let's look at number one. What would you say is the first thing we should look at if we're going to talk about that?
Well, the gut.
Yeah.
The first thing we have to look at is obviously besides getting over the fact that it's going to take some time.
Yes. So you said take some time. What do you mean by that? Are we looking at a 6-month process, a year-long process, multiple years?
Again, that all depends on how much you're working out, what you're eating, how quickly you can change your diet,
and how long it took you to get in this place.
And how long it took you to get in that place. That's definitely important.
Yeah.
And how big are you? If you're a bigger person, obviously it's going to take longer. If you've been unhealthy for longer, it's going to take you longer. So those factors there's a lot of factors, right? Let's just generalize, right? If you want to generalize, there's no time frame. Honestly, there's no time frame.
Okay,
I mean, I can't tell you. Some people can lose it in 2-3 months. I know women who have babies, and then boom, and within a month or two, they're back in the gym and they have a 6-pack in the 3rd or 4th month. And then there are women who have children who never get over it, because they weren't working out from before. So then they started working out later. Then that takes longer. Like all these things matter, right? So for just in general, if you just have a belly, not from pregnancy, not postpartum, just have a belly, you need to clean up your diet. And you need to exercise. Right?
Okay, so start
first.
Clean up diet. What does that mean?
First, people think there's two theories here. One is, it's 75% in the kitchen, or 80% in the kitchen, 20% in the gym, or vice versa. Some people are thinking, it's mostly gym and nothing to do with eating. Right? We have both categories, and I'm gonna go down. And I know a lot of people have said, abs are made in the kitchen. Yeah, abs are made in the kitchen, but I like to look at it as a whole picture. Healthiness as well. I say 50-50, right? If you can eat really well and you have abs and you have good physical activity, you're working out and you're exercising, that right there is the first step, right? So you need to have both components, right? Then go ahead.
Do you tell your clients any type of standard to have to eat healthy?
Yeah, so that's the next thing, right? So the second thing is we gotta keep it simple, right? And I'm directly speaking to our community here. You're not going to, count calories. We know we're not going to sit there measuring food. It's just, that's not our culture. That's not something that we grew up on. I mean, do you think your kids will do it? Maybe if you start doing it now, but it's just a lot of work, I think. I think that when people start measuring stuff and start counting calories, they just take on too much for themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's just too much work.
What is calculating your calories? For those that don't know,
calculating your calories is like literally, measuring your food, how much it weighs by grams and ounces, right? And then converting that into how much protein and carbs you're getting, and converting that to how many calories that equals, right? So you could say, if I eat 20 grams of chicken breast, how many calories does that equal, right?
Yeah.
It probably equals like maybe 200 something calories like that. So you're counting calories. Now, there's a lot of problems with that as well, right? When you're counting calories, bad food has more calories, good food has less calories, all of these things. So let's just simplify everything.
Got it.
And I love simplifying things. First things first is why do when we have a gut, what is causing the gut, right? I mean, what is it that's really causing the gut? One, overeating.
Yeah.
Overeating. And eating the wrong foods. I think those are the two main things that we have to kind of understand.
Just from like a religious perspective, overeating, I find it so funny because even in different faiths, you see like gluttony is It's a deadly sin.
Yeah.
It's spiritually deadly and it's physically deadly.
Yeah.
No one goes to physician says I eat too little, I'm having massive heart attacks. Like it doesn't happen. Like it's physically and spiritually deadly. But if you look at if you ask any Muslim, for example, what's the sunnah of eating? Everyone gets it wrong. Everyone always says it's 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 air, which is wrong. The hadith in Sunan Ibn Majah, it mentions that there is no vessel that the son of Adam, so any human being, can fill that's worse than the stomach. So that's how it begins. So we already established we should not fill our stomachs. And the second thing is they should suffice on 1 or 2 or 3 bites, just enough to be able to move on. Yeah, just stand straight, exactly. Now, if a person needs it, people working in the fields, etc., then so this is now the maximum. So we went from what's the expectation to the maximum. The maximum, then eat 1/3, fill 1/3 of that vessel with food, 1/3 of that vessel with water, and then leave 1/3 to be able to breathe properly. And already we start off with people thinking 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is the minimum. And then when they eat beyond it, they say, okay, well, I'm violating the sunnah, but I'm not doing anything worse. Actually, when we go beyond a few bites, we're already violating I don't want to say violating, we're going beyond what's expected to keep us going on a regular basis. Now, who's saying this? The Prophet's saying this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when is he saying this? He's saying this in a time when they're living very difficult lives, and they're traversing the desert, or they're living in harsh climates, and they're working physically, and they're able to maintain themselves on that. Now, I don't know about you, but rocking back and forth in this comfortable chair does not really require that much from me to be able to consume so I can do it with more efficiency. And so if they were able to remain efficient, so are we. Now, I don't want to go extreme over here because people say, well, that's it, let's turn off the podcast. But at least we should know what's expected. Then we can work from there.
Yep. And that's really important for people to understand that, how are they eating so little and getting away with it, right? Today again, genetics comes into a little bit into play. Those people were stronger and all that. And it really matters on who you are, right? I mean, that sunnah and that direction that we've been given is pretty much for everyone, right? But then some people have to eat a little bit more, some people have to eat a little bit less. But the most important thing I think we have to understand is what they were eating that gave them that enough energy that they were able to eat 1 or 2, 3 bites and be able to still stand straight and physically, do all the work and everything that they were supposed to do. Because reality is, and I love saying this because, the belly fat issue, and it also goes back to us being strong and strength, right? Strong people usually don't have big bellies that are like out of control. People, world's strongest man, you see those guys, they have a little bit of bellies, but those bellies are not like, those are like, they're not like,
they're rock hard.
And the reason that those guys have that is because the amount of weight that they have to push, they need that extra, fat plus muscle and everything. That there's no just muscle there. There's everything you need in your body to push that 1,000 pounds. So those people are extremely, a little bit different, right? But for in general, just to be strong and healthy, you don't have a big belly. People usually, you don't look at a big belly and go, oh, that's a strong guy. You look at the guy without the belly and say, that guy's healthy. And then you see some guy with muscle, okay, that guy's strong, right? So it's pretty much a clear cut, kind of idea of who's strong and who's not. So what really bothers me is that these our people, our sheikhs especially, they sit around and they get really fat. And then, when you tell them that, hey, there's going to come a time that, you're going to need physical strength. What if something happens? Or the Prophet and the Sahaba, the reason I was talking about this to begin with is because they never sat around, right? These people were training, because they fought a lot of wars. And I always like to ask, what happened to the sunnah of fighting? What happened to the sunnah of being strong? What happened to the sunnah of knowing how to stand up and actually fight? These people think that somehow some miracle will come, some angelic miracle will happen, and these shuyukh will stand up all of a sudden and fight like the Taliban or something like that. It doesn't make any sense to me where they get these ideas, right? Like, where do they get these ideas, right? Where do they get the idea that today we're going to just stand up and all of a sudden we're going to be strong and we're going to be, it's not going to happen, right? There is something there that tells us these people were working all day, they were doing all this stuff all day, and they were strong and they didn't eat a lot, right? So they were eating the right foods. That's the main thing. They were eating the right amount of food, and they were eating the right food. They're not eating too much. They're just eating the right foods.
So when I talk, sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying I think the problem is all we eat is processed food.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't eat nutritious, healthy food that is going to give us that energy throughout the day. What we're eating is we're eating a bowl of cereal in the morning.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I eat a bowl of cereal in the afternoon, and I'll eat and I'll eat a bowl of cereal at night, and it has nothing to do with the nutritious value. I just like the way it tastes.
Yeah.
Great much.
There goes the podcast.
I think our clients know what you eat.
So no, let's take it back one step. So we were talking about keeping it simple in what we eat. So we covered quantity.
Yeah.
And I think just a practical piece of advice for everyone that I'm going to give. Now you can disagree, and we're going to disagree. So I'm going to tell everyone that look, step one, with the quantity, is one plate. Just don't go back for seconds.
Yeah.
I think for most people, they go back for seconds, and there's two problems with this. Problem number one, they feel guilty, and then they consume all of it, and now they've overeaten. Problem number two is they throw it away. So both paths are very destructive because one, we're just completely discarding the blessings of food, or two, we're over-consuming, and we're going to eventually in another way discard those blessings as well. So I think step one, my advice would be with quantity, keeping it simple, stick to one plate. And when I'm talking about one plate, I wish we had a plate in front of us. But if you have a plate, you see like that concave part where it sort of comes in, that part, not the edges. Just that center part of the plate. You want to put it on there? Go ahead, put it on there. Now I know people are going to start piling up.
It's funny you mentioned that one plate thing. So we have like two different size plates at our house. So one is a bigger plate and one is a smaller plate.
You know, my wife recently switched us over to smaller plates for all of us.
That's where I was going.
Actually smart. I didn't even think about that.
My wife now forcefully puts the smaller plate in front of me just so I don't go to that big plate.
Much takes out the rice in the small plate, takes a big one, small plate back to the family. Okay, so great. Quantity is definitely important. Guys, we have to keep it simple. That's what's one of the things that my main philosophy is about everything to do with physical fitness is we get it too complicated, right?
Yeah.
People are getting it too complicated. They're watching these fad diets. They're asking me, can I do this kind of diet? Can I do this kind of fasting? I don't have a problem with intermittent fasting in general. I have a problem with intermittent fasting depending on how you do it. If you're doing it wrong, then it doesn't make sense to me. Is it good to fast? Yes. The longer you don't eat, the longer you can hold off on not eating, the better it is for you. One, because your metabolism gets better. Number two, you also start lowering your insulin, right? I mean, one of the reasons why people, the Desi community is high in hypertension, high in, diabetes, and definitely high in heart disease, right? Those three things we are definitely the highest in.
So I look, by profession, I'm an English teacher, so you have to define these terms like insulin for, at least for me. By the way, Shak did go through med school, and so part of his background, he's speaking about these things, comes from a medical perspective. So if you can help just like explain layman's terms what insulin, that'd be great.
So basically, every time we eat, right, we have an insulin spike. Basically, the insulin, when you eat, your blood sugar goes up. Whatever you're eating gets converted over into some kind of blood sugar, and then when your blood the more sugar there's in your blood, the higher of an insulin response you're gonna have, right? So what happens if you continuously are having an insulin response all day long? You're usually you start gaining a little bit more weight. First of all, that's how you get diabetes. If anybody wants to know, if you continuously have a sugar spike, how they say, if you eat too much sugar, you get diabetes. Well, the reason is because if you're continuously eating sugar, you're continuously going to have an insulin spike, right? Your what is that organ that? No, not the liver.
Pancreas?
The pancreas is continuously pushing out insulin, right? So what happens after a while, the way you get diabetes is the body is so used to just overproducing that insulin that there's no more uptake, right? Even glucose or no glucose, your body is producing insulin, and you have insulin in your body, so there's extra insulin, so that causes an issue. How do you keep the insulin low? Well, you keep the blood sugar low. How do you keep the blood sugar low? One easy way is don't eat, right? When you don't eat, you're not gonna have an insulin spike. So that's one way of decreasing it. We actually Saad sent a very interesting video today about this whole glycemic index and the insulin spike and insulin response.
Sent that one.
Did you send that one today?
Yeah,
It was a great video. This doctor kind of broke it down really, really well, and I would probably put some clips of that into our video if we can. Yeah. But the guy had
We just post a link.
Yeah, we could probably post a link. A really good video about that. Talking about the glycemic index. What's the glycemic index? The glycemic index tells you how much sugar a food has when you eat it. It converts over. So carbs like white rice, candy, all these things, potatoes, junk food in general. All of these things have an insulin spike. What insulin spike does is it keeps you hungry. It makes you hungry faster, right? So these foods get processed really fast. Like how you have pasta and stuff like that. People say you eat it, you have a very quick response. Your insulin spikes. You have all this energy. Your body eats up that energy. It's eating the energy from that insulin spike, right? And then after a little while, boom, it dies. You have a crash, and you're done, right? So if you're gonna go work out right away, you want to eat some kind of more of a carby food, then you can eat like pasta. You go work out, that's fine. You burn it right through. But if you're not gonna go, if you ever notice, if you go to the gym right after eating like a big heavy meal like pasta or rice, if you don't go in the next 30 or 40 minutes, you go an hour, 2 hours later, you're dying. You're lazy, right? If you want that energy from that insulin spike from that bad foods, you have to go pretty much within the first 20, 30 minutes. They're not bad foods, bad carbs, you could say. The high sugar carbs, right?
So are you saying you should work out right after you eat?
No, I'm saying like runners, they eat like high carb foods. Their glycemic, their glycemic. Those are foods with higher glycemic index. Their glucose spikes, the insulin spikes, and then boom, they have energy, and then they use that energy right away. If you want prolonged energy, then you have to eat more complex carbs. Right? Simple carbs gives you right away energy. Complex carbs give you energy for the long run. So if you're eating simple carbs all the time, your sugar is spiking. Well, guess what? Right away it goes away, and then you're feeling hungry as
What
well.
are simple carbs?
Yeah, it's the exact question I was gonna say.
Rice,
Yeah.
potatoes.
Which are those? Simple or complex?
Simple carbs.
Okay.
Complex carbs are more like sweet potatoes, quinoa, what's it called? Couscous. Yeah, stuff like that. What does that mean by simple and complex carbs? Simple carbs basically break down right away, and sugar is available right away, so it gives you energy serve.
It's like dates.
And dates have protein, carbs, and other stuff in there. So that's natural sugars, right? It's a little bit different than eating. Fruits are pretty okay in the sugar department. It's more when we're talking about actual sugar, high sugar foods, like the high syrup, corn fructose and all that, and mostly carbs that are simple carbs. That also that also has an insulin spike.
So just again keeping it simple. So now we have from what we're gonna eat. We have simple carbs. We have complex carbs.
Yeah.
And you gave some simple examples. Some simple carbs was like potatoes, and we have rice.
Yeah.
And then you're saying like complex carbs, sweet potatoes, quinoa, couscous.
Yeah.
So for all of us who come from any background, but especially like the Indo-Pac background, we eat a lot of rice, and we seem to eat a lot of simple carbs. We already spoke about quantity. Now let's look at the quality of food. The first question is, should we eat simple carbs? And secondly, if we do, when do you recommend eating simple carbs, and how much?
Okay. Yeah, so simple carbs can definitely, you can't cut them. You don't have to cut them all out. They have their own.
I think
benefit.
this got some new viewers because you said that. Awesome.
Yeah. They definitely have its own benefit. It's just the quantity of how much you're eating, each time. So that's the most. If you're gonna eat simple carbs, the quantity matters the most. The timing doesn't matter as much, I wouldn't say. But I think some people say, "Oh, don't eat at late night because then you're just sitting, sleeping on it." And I don't think that makes that big of a difference if you're an active person. Really, what matters is what you're eating. You can eat like late night and go to bed. That's totally fine. If you're eating clean food, nothing's gonna happen. No problem. There's gonna be no insulin spike. There's gonna be no crash afterwards.
Instead of going to your body.
Right, but at the same time, as your body is rebuilding itself at nighttime, it needs certain nutrients available to itself, right? So if you're eating the right stuff and going to bed, when your body's repairing itself, especially at nighttime when it's repairing itself, it needs protein, right? In order to go through protein synthesis, in order to repair that muscle and rebuild that muscle, you need certain nutrients in your body. If you go to sleep completely hungry, you're most likely not going to be building that muscle as optimally as somebody who's eating the right food and gone to sleep. So it really matters what you're eating. It doesn't really matter when you're eating. It really matters what you're eating. So again, let's just simplify it back again. Let's forget, high sugar, low sugar, all that stuff is very complex, right? Because when you sit there and start looking at this stuff and thinking about this, it's like, whoa, what the hell? Who's gonna do all this? Who's gonna understand all this? Simply put, everybody, and I was talking to kids at your school yesterday, everyone knows what bad food is, right? Everybody knows what junk food is. Everybody knows what, the garbage food is, processed food is. More and more, we've been learning about this in the last 5-10 years. I think everybody knows it. It's pretty much common knowledge. First things first, stop snacking. Number one problem that we have, I mean, in America, I'd say, is we don't stop eating. I mean, that's unreal. If you go and look at third world countries and you look at poor people and you look at their lives and you understand they cannot imagine someone who's hand to mouth all day long. And it's the truth. When we're working, when we're doing homework, there's some kind of snack has to be there at all time. Oh, there's nuts, there's fruits, there's this, there's that. Everything could be good, but again, in moderation, things are good, right? If you're eating too much nuts, not good. If you're eating too much fruits, it's not good. If you're eating too much quinoa, it's not good. It's you're gonna have the opposite effect of eating the right
Sorry,
quantity.
I'm tired.
Oh, that's totally fine. My number one advice to people always is yes, we have to know what we're eating. We have to know how much we're eating. The easiest way to start by losing belly fat right away, if you're not doing anything else, if you're not part of an exercise program, you don't know what to do, you're slowly starting up, but you need some diet advice, you haven't gotten with a trainer, you haven't come to us yet, whichever way you want to call it, the reality is stop eating so much. I mean, I ask people all the time, I rarely eat. That's not possible. I only eat once a day. But what are you eating all day that is requiring you to only eat one meal per day? You know?
It's funny you mentioned that. So my background in high school was I used to wrestle. And wrestlers, we have horrible eating habits, and we would always convince ourselves that we have to make a certain weight class, and so we would compromise the quality of food for the quantity of food, because if I eat 2 pounds of something, I'm going to gain 2 pounds, short term, not long term. So we would snack a lot just so we wouldn't get a lot of the weight of the food would not weigh us down. But then long term, it's really damaging. And I think a lot of people say, well, I only eat one meal a day. But if you look at their cars, you just go in the car, you'll see like nuts and high calories. You'll see a package of chips, high calories again. And the bang for the buck is not there because they're not getting much nutrients, but they're eating and eating and eating. And I can eat like 3 or 4 packs of chips without even thinking about it. And really, it's not equivalent to a plate of healthy food, but it's really damaging. Yep. So when Shaq is saying stop snacking, a lot of us have gotten into the routine, again, keeping it simple, that we snack and we do it so discreetly.
Yeah, nonchalant.
Yeah, it's just, and we're just popping it in. Yeah. And it's only this many nuts.
Yeah, yep.
That's like 700 calories right there we're popping in, and we don't recognize the damage it's causing. So when we say don't snack, it's not to take away the joy of life from anyone. And Shaq always says, look, we were created to eat to live, not live to eat. And he really looks at food as fuel, and that's a really interesting concept. But stop snacking really, that advice is to make us, one, appreciate the actual meals we have. Because we go to eat because it's more of a ritual, meaning a meal, like family time meal, it becomes a ritual. But secondly, because we're not hungry, we don't enjoy it and appreciate it. And I want to go a second point just with what Shaq's saying. So stop snacking. Secondly, to keep it simple, don't eat in a distracted manner. Yeah. He always pushes to our clients, like, eat with presence. Now what happens, someone has their cell phone and they're just sort of, or they're doing work, etc. Now they're just constantly popping things into their mouths without noticing the amount that's coming in, let alone the quality. So we're keeping it simple. Stop snacking, and in particular, when you stop snacking, it will help you appreciate the meals that you are eating. And when we eat in a focused manner. Say the dua. When you say the dua, look, it's a powerful supplication. What are we saying? Oh Allah, bless us in what you have provided us and save us from the hellfire. And then we start to, and we begin in the name of Allah, name of God. And now we start eating. And everything we eat, if you're eating meats, think there was a living creature that sacrificed its life so we can have a meal. Think your mom, your dad, your wife, your husband, your children, whoever made that meal, took time out of their day. They will never get it back. They'll pass away, but they'll never get that back. That half hour they spent eating, they're never going to get it back. They gave that so we can eat. So sit with the presence of appreciation when we eat. Even our scholars would say, do wudu, be in a state of purity when we're eating. Look at the food. Enjoy the food. One problem I always had is I pop it in as much as I can. I don't know why. It's always been an issue with me. Take, the sunnah to eat with 3 fingers. You take a smaller bite, but you can enjoy the sensation of the food. And that presence will help us enjoy the food so we don't have to fill our stomachs with quantity. We can enjoy the qualities. That's the second way of keeping it simple. Anyway, go ahead. I just know we're on the clock a little, so I'm trying to just jump in.
Going along with what you were saying, eating, one of my friends recently told me he's getting gastric bypass because of the health conditions that he has, and his exercise has to be he has to eat a morsel and chew it 20 times, and then he has to eat his meal in 20 minutes. And then he has to take a 20-second. It's like the 20-20-20 rule or something. So you each niwala or morsel is 20 bites. You have to rest like 20 to 40 seconds in between each bite, and you take 20 minutes to eat your meal.
Wow, that's awesome.
And this is just before he gets the surgery. So he has to try to maintain this because I guess after surgery.
Won't that help him lose weight though?
Huh?
That should help him lose
That
weight.
should help him lose
He
weight,
must
but
be in a different
he's in a different state where he needs to get this surgery.
Yeah.
So in order to prepare for that surgery, he has to do this.
That's awesome.
And if he can't maintain this for 6 months, then they're like, we probably can't even do the surgery for you.
Oh, wow.
So it's that extreme. So imagine now a normal person who doesn't have to go through all of that. They do that consistently for 6 months. I'm pretty sure you're going to see a huge difference.
What's a gastric bypass?
Gastric bypass is basically they'll take a stopper and put it on your stomach and shrink your stomach.
Yeah. So my wife's a therapist by profession, and she says that anytime clients come in, they have to actually some physicians require that you see a therapist first because there is a psychological component to it, and they always work on changing your habits prior to it. So you can. But it's so interesting that when we get to the point where we need it, that's when we change our habits. Where over what we're trying to do here is preach. An ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure. So if we can work on these habits now that situation is different with your friend. But for us, we're preaching to our audience and ourselves first and foremost that if we can practice the ounce of prevention principle, then we would never have to delve into the pound of cure.
Very, very true. So I don't know how much time we're at right now.
10 minutes.
We're at 40?
We got 8 minutes before the azan goes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'll just tie it off. Let me try to tie it off real quick and see what we can get to. So the first thing that we kind of understood about eating is the how long it takes, or getting rid of the belly is how long it takes. It's going to take some time to get rid of the belly. The second thing we have to understand is we have to stop snacking, right? Snacking is killing us. We talked about insulin spikes and sugar, the high blood sugar in the body. That is also done because of snacking, right? As long as you're eating, you're spiking your blood sugar the entire time. Whenever you spike your blood sugar, whenever you spike that glucose, and you have an insulin rise, your belly fat doesn't go away. That's
When you're talking about snacking, you're talking about just
eating,
nonstop eating.
Yeah,
right? You
always
can still
eating.
snack throughout the day, right?
Well, I mean, why would you need to if you're eating whole meals? That's the one thing the first thing I start my clients off with is I tell them, eat real food. If you're hungry, have a meal. Simple. If you're not hungry, don't eat. Right? So the timing thing goes away. People are like, what time should I eat? Forget about timing. You wake up in the morning, yes, have breakfast. I have a staple breakfast that I assign to all my clients. Yeah. We could talk about that later.
Wait, stop over here. You said if you're hungry, eat.
Yeah.
What's the difference between being hungry and wanting to eat? 'Cause I think we've become confused in that.
Hungry means your body's actually asking you to eat, right? Your stomach is hurting. You've gone to the point where you're out of energy. And you're getting so food has so many psychological components to it. It's just like never ending, right? Yeah. There was some psychiatrist I was listening to the other day, and he was who was it? It was somebody we actually know, and they were talking about how they had a client who came in and they were just always upset and they were always having problems. They were just pooped by the time that the day ended. I mean, all these issues. And the simple question that he asked was, when do you eat? Like, what's your timing to eat when you're eating? And going back and looking at it, this person was not eating the right food at the right time, basically going all day, like, the normal American life. I wake up in the morning, I got to run to work, so I just have a cup of coffee and then I'm gone, and all day. And in the afternoon, I grab a quick snack and then, I'll have dinner. That was their goal. But by the time dinner's come in, this person's gone. They're wiped out, and then they're waking up cranky. They're having all these issues. Anxiety comes into play, all kinds of things. Food, proper rest, proper nutrition, and proper exercise can do wonders. These are the cure for almost any disease, any illness in the world, whether it's psychological, whether it's psychological, emotional, physical, or spiritual. Even spiritual. We have an alim who comes to our class. Ever since he started working out and eating properly, he has literally, messaged each one of us and talked to each one of us and told us how amazing his prayer has been. Right, the spirituality in his prayer has completely changed. It's gone up. And
He said he doesn't focus on the aches and pains of sitting. He focuses on his salah now.
And it's very interesting because when you're sick, you can't do anything right. You know, that's the reality. When you're sick, you're gone. You know, you can't pray right, you can't eat right, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to do anything. So that's just the feeling that you get from just getting healthy. You know, we're just so used to that nasty feeling. Sometimes I sit down and I think, like, dude, if I eat like this for 3 days, if I go out on vacation sometimes and I eat outside food or I eat this food, and I don't work out for 3 days, and I'm like, man, I feel so off. And I'm wondering, how do people are okay with this, like, lethargic, this tired feeling, this feeling of just, you know, always being bloated and just, you know, gassy. All kinds of stuff happens when you're eating bad food. So one thing is, do we need to pay attention to glycemic index and glucose and all that stuff and insulin responses? Yes. If you can't learn about it, it's pretty simple. Stop snacking. Stop eating too much. Eating too much will get you diabetes. Eating too much will get you hypertension. Eating too much will give you heart problems, right? All these things. Stop. Number one thing is stop eating too much. Stop snacking. Desi people, you don't need to stuff your children in order for them to be healthy. When they want to eat, they will eat. Get rid of the junk from your food, from your house. Don't buy garbage, and it's that simple of a fix. I don't want to hear, oh, my kid this. Don't. You're a bad parent if you can't do this right. It's that simple. I'm a parent. I have 6 kids. I can say that, you know. If you can't bring in the right food into your house, that's your fault, right? You're doing something wrong. I have kids coming to me and asking me, oh, how are we supposed to eat healthier? And, you know, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, where are your parents? And why aren't they asking me, why can't you eat healthier? Or they're asking me, what should we tell our parents to buy? That's an issue, parents. You're eating unhealthy. You're passing this on to your children. You're going to have, you know, weak, dumb children, to be honest with you, because if they don't have the proper exercise, you're not going to hit your milestones. You're not going to hit your milestones if you're not properly, you know, eating the right food and exercising the right way. You know.
What time are we looking at Isha? 4 minutes. Okay, so last thing before we go, we gotta hit protein.
Yeah.
We gotta hit protein.
Okay, that's what my last thing was. Protein, carbs, and fat. How, you know, what's the percentages and all that? I can tell you guys very simply, you know, if you're over the age of 25, most likely you're going to need more protein in your diet than you're going to need carbs. You're going to need more fat in your diet than you should have carbs in your diet as well. Good fats. People are always worried, wait, fats are bad for you. They're going to give you, no. If you are eating good fats, they're actually really, really good for you. Good fat decreases your weight. Good fat, you know, balances your hormones. Good fat is really needed for you to you know, optimally perform, right? So good fat, good carbs, and protein. Protein is extremely important. I think most of the Desi community eats less protein and higher carbs. Thus the lethargy, thus the weaknesses, thus the body composition. When I say body composition, I mean that your body is made up of more fat than muscle. You don't need to go to the doctor and do expensive tests for that. Just look at yourself and you should be able to tell. Do you have more muscle or do you have more fat? Very simple. Look at your arms. Everybody look at their arms. You know, Desi person, if you're wondering, do I have more muscle and more fat? What's bigger? Is this area bigger or is this area bigger? Very, very simple way to look at it, right? So you need to have more protein in your diet. We can get that stuff is, you know, you have to sit with me or you have to sit with somebody and kind of talk about that. Simply putting it, not all carbs, not all proteins, and not all fats are created equal, right? So that's another thing we have to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be eating the right protein, the right fats, and the right.
I think we should do a whole episode just on what to eat.
Oh, no, absolutely. And one of the benefits of protein is that it makes you satiated. You feel full after it.
Yeah.
Where carbs makes you want to eat more junk.
Right, exactly. And dude, junk food is loaded with chemicals that make you want to eat more junk food, right? So
It's a whole industry.
It's a whole industry. Look at all the crap that's in there. Your food shouldn't have ingredients, dude. We should look at steak. What's the ingredient in steak? Just steak, right? What's rice? Just rice. What's quinoa? Just quinoa. If you're reading, you know, a list of ingredients, there's a problem over there, right? So I know it's a good idea to talk about what we want to eat. We'll probably do that much later. Not something that I like to concentrate on. I just like to keep it simple, guys. Everybody knows what are good proteins. Everyone knows what's good fat. Everyone knows what's good carbs, right? Everyone knows what that is. Eat less. Stop snacking and eat the right food and let's start, you know, like I think Saad made an amazing point, guys. Food is sustenance. You know, I had a client who lost from 300 pounds to 258 and he was well on his way to probably be at 220 and he said to me, you know, at one point he gave up and I was like, what's the problem? He goes, I need to enjoy life. You know, and that's such a weird concept for Muslims to have, that enjoying life is based around something so I mean, it's so unimportant, right? It's just food. Food is literally sustenance. The only reason Allah has made food in this dunya is for us to sustain ourselves, not to party around it, not to have groups around it, not to spend, crazy amount of people. People are like, oh, this Wagyu booth, I gotta go eat this $100. Dude, you don't need to do all that crazy stuff. It literally is just. I hate people. Not people. I hate when this whole like foodie groups going to restaurants and spending hours of and say, oh, this is brotherhood. No, do something else for brotherhood. Go do an outside activity. Play basketball. I don't care. I'm not a big sports person. Go do something else. Why does it have to be based around spend and then you're spending extravagant amounts of money? Yeah. I just want to finish with that kind of spiritual aspect, guys. You're wasting money. You have to answer for that. You're sitting here eating a $100 plate. There's a person on the other side who's from your family, who's your ummati, who doesn't have a penny to eat food from. You have to answer for that. You have to answer for the garbage that you're putting into your food. You have to answer for all this stuff. And then you're basing your life around food, which is literally is just there for you to do what you need to do. Whatever it is that we have to do in life, that's what it is for. It's just fuel. As simply as that. So inshallah, we'll end with that.
So it's an abrupt stop because it's about prayer time right now. So subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdi.
Shout out your Muslim.
We want to thank Mr. Osman for hosting this podcast, and inshallah we will catch y'all later. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.